So you've done it. You've spent weeks, maybe even months, building a machine learning model, and it works. But there's always that little voice in the back of your head, right? Is this the absolute best it can be? Today, we are going on a quest to answer that question, diving deep into the world of hyperparameter tuning. It's a feeling we all get. You have a model that's making pretty good predictions, but you can't shake the feeling that a few small tweaks, a few adjustments to the settings could unlock a whole new level of performance. And you know what? You're almost always right. But finding those perfect settings can feel like you're just guessing. So why is it so hard? Why does it feel like we're just fumbling around in the dark? Well, you've just stumbled upon the absolute core of the problem. It's something called a black box optimization problem. Now, that sounds super technical and intimidating, I know, but the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. Okay, imagine your model's performance. It's like a function that's locked inside a black box. We can put in a combination of hyperparameters, things like learning rate or the number of network layers, and the box will spit out a performance score. We get to see the result, but we have absolutely no idea what the formula inside that box looks like. We can't just solve an equation to find the best settings. So we're basically just guessing inputs to see what kind of outputs we get. But that leads to the next big question. Just how big is this box? How many combinations are we even talking about here? Well, this is where it gets kind of crazy. The search space gets massive, and it gets massive fast. Let's just take a pretty modest example. Let's say we want to test 100 different learning rates, 6 regularization values, 3 optimizers, and just a few options for layers and neurons. All of a sudden, we're looking at 27,000 unique combinations to test. Yeah, 27,000. And if each one of those training runs takes, let's say, a full day, you'd be looking at almost 74 years to test them all. So clearly, brute forcing this is, well, it's not an option. We need a strategy. We need a map for our exploration. A map sounds great, right? Anything's better than just guessing randomly. So what's a more organized way to go about this? Well, the first logical step many people take is something called a grid search. It's a systematic way to start exploring that hyperparameter space. So with grid search, you define a literal grid of values for your most important hyperparameters. In this example, we've set up a few options for learning rate and the number of neurons. The algorithm then just goes through and tests every single intersection on that grid. It's methodical, it's exhaustive, but you can probably already see the problem. Testing every single one of those points still feels really inefficient. There's got to be a better way, right? You bet there is. That rigid grid is inefficient. And the alternative is something called random search. Now, at first, that might sound like a step backward, going from a system to just randomness, but it turns out it's often a massive leap forward. Okay, so here's the really cool insight behind why random search works so well. Not all hyperparameters are created equal. Some, like the learning rate, can have a huge impact on your model, while others might not really matter that much at all. Grid search wastes a ton of time meticulously testing tiny variations on those unimportant parameters. But random search, by just picking random points across the whole space, is statistically way more likely to stumble upon a really good value for the important parameters, and it does it much, much faster. It's a gamble for sure, but it's a smart one. So a smart gamble is great, but can we do better? Is there a way to search that isn't a gamble at all? A way that actually learns as it goes? Oh, yes, there is. And that's where we meet Bayesian optimization. You should think of this less like a static map and more like an intelligent guide that's learning the terrain right there with you, every step of the way. It's a really beautiful process. It starts by testing a few random points just to get a feel for the landscape. Then it builds this simple probabilistic model, they call it a surrogate, of what it thinks the performance landscape looks like. Next, and this is the genius part, it uses something called an acquisition function to intelligently decide where to test next. It's constantly balancing between exploiting areas that already look good and exploring totally new areas that might hold some hidden gems. And with every new test, it updates its internal map, getting smarter and smarter about where to look. It makes every single evaluation count. And really, that's the whole idea right there. Instead of just searching blindly or systematically, we're actively building a map as we go, and we're using every piece of new information to guide us toward that treasure, the treasure of peak model performance. Okay, so this intelligent search is awesome, but what about some practical tips you can use right now to make your search smarter, even if you're just starting out with grid or random search? There are 2 really powerful strategies that will make a huge difference: course-defined optimization and sampling on the logarithmic scale. So the first one, course define, is pretty much what it sounds like. You start with a very wide, sparse search over your entire hyperparameter space. Once you find a region that looks promising, you then zoom in and do a second, much finer search, only in that smaller, more promising area. It's a simple and really effective way to focus your computer's time where it matters most. And this chart illustrates our second tip perfectly. For a parameter like the learning rate, sampling on a linear scale, which is what you see here, is incredibly wasteful. Look at that. Almost all your test points get clumped together in the high-value ranges where tiny changes don't really matter that much. Nearly 900 of the 1,000 samples are stuck between zero point 0.1 and 1.0. What a waste! The much smarter approach is to sample on a logarithmic scale. This makes sure you get an even spread of samples across different orders of magnitude, so you're testing values like 0.1, 0.01, and 0.001 equally, which is often where the real performance breakthroughs are hiding. So what's the ultimate takeaway here? It's that effective hyperparameter tuning is all about strategy, not just brute strength. We've gone from the impossible brute force method to the slow grid search, the smarter random search, and all the way up to the truly intelligent guidance of Bayesian optimization. When you combine these methods with pro tips, you can find much better models in a tiny fraction of the time. This is awesome. I feel like I'm not just guessing anymore. I actually have a real toolkit for exploration now. And that's the goal. The next time you build a model, don't settle for good enough. You now have the map and you have the guide. So go out and discover what your model is truly capable of. If this explainer helped you chart your course, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.